hope she grows up as beautiful as you. I really do, Nonna, you darling.
I feel like Elayn's story is a very modern story. It's a story of our age. My mum Elayn lived in an apartment by herself and had always had a very engaged, empowered, independent life. But in the last year of her life, she was fighting chronic pain and becoming increasingly despairing and overwhelmed by the situation.
Hello, my name is Elayn Gemmell. I'm in a very bad situation. I've been in chronic pain all this year.
Mum sat down on a favourite chair in front of the TV and ate pills like lollies and drank Bailey's Irish cream until she fell asleep.
Mum's death was horrifically lonely and bleak because she couldn't tell anyone what she was going to do for fear of implicating all of us, her family and her friends. So she did it entirely alone.
I believed that Mum was in pain, but I didn't believe that it was severe as what she said it was.
I wish I'd had a very calm conversation with her about what she really wanted to do in terms of the end of her life. I wish I had been there for her in a way that I just wasn't. My life is crazy and mad, and people say to me, I don't know how you do it.
Oh, God.
Nikki has an intense life. She has 4 wonderful children who range in age from late teens to 5.
We're running out of time.
She writes a column every week. She's always writing another book. She is never just doing one thing.
Ollie, Chloe, oh my God.
Mum, you got the
I've got that note for you. Son, you've got to hand it in. Yeah, but Thea, what have you got with a leather jacket in your bag?
I feel awful to say this, and I hope Mum didn't feel this. She came 6th in all my world. There were 4 little people and my husband.
Run. Remember, it's Thursday.
I feel like too often in my life, and in a lot of people my age, the older people in our lives are squeezed to the edge of our lives.
Elayn had become racked with pain and was needing the dependency of family but not wanting to burden the family with her dependency.
The next morning, it was the Friday morning, the police knocked on my door. I think it was about 11 o'clock. And as soon as I looked at them, I knew something awful had happened. And I just went, it's my mother, isn't it? And they said, yes. Oh, I was just a mess, just so flawed and shocked and devastated. The male police officer had taken out his notebook and he was taking notes of what I was saying. Why are they taking such careful note of what I'm saying? And it gradually dawned on me that perhaps they were seeing if I was implicated in the whole thing too.
They took us into the room and there was Mum on a stainless steel surgical style table. I held her hand and she was freezing cold, and it was probably the most horrible thing I've had to do in my life.
If your parent dies, they are the people that shape you, that guide you, that hold you through life, and suddenly you feel rudderless. I just look back and I think, what a waste. What a stupid waste. All those times when we didn't talk to each other. I know now that she's gone. Why did we ever bother with all of that wasted energy? Mum's father was a mining engineer, so that was Mum's world. Coal mining families in the Hunter Valley. Mum's beauty was the ticket out of that world.
Look. Oh, here's one of her ads. Doesn't say what brand it is. STC, whatever that is. Big story.
Big store.
She ended up being photographed by the likes of Max Dupain, Lawrence Leguy, these amazing photographers of the 50s and the 60s. And then she married a coal miner.
I'm an underground coal miner, and I spotted her. Who is she? And this fella said, I don't know, but she goes to the dance of a Saturday night at the Cessnock Town Hall. Took me a while for her, you know, in the barn dance and all that sort of thing before I could take her in my arms and say to her, you know, I think you should consider me. We moved from Cessnock to Wollongong and I had 3 children there, Nikki, Paul and Mark. She was very, very clean and neat and tidy and spick and span. They were like shining bloody 2-bob pieces, the 3 of them. But she went back to work, which was, I don't like the idea of a lady working when she's married, but that's me. I'm different. I'm old-fashioned.
Mum and Dad divorced when I was 10. She was in her late 30s. She found herself in Sydney. She was into everything, music recitals, ballet, concerts, all that kind of world. It was like she was trying to lift me into another world and mould me into the woman that she thought would be a success.
Mum, very critical of all of us. You know, she loved us, but she was very hard on us as well to have us appear and perform to her standards. She had high standards. It was very hard to be perfect for Mum.
Mum was the love of my life and the hate of my life. And I feel awful saying that. No one could reduce me the way Mum could.
Nikki duxed every school she went to, but she studied for it, she worked for that. It wasn't too long after she left high school that she got a cadetship as a journalist.
It's a really cool bunch of people. It's the most fun I've ever had in a job.
It's fun, I'm always learning something.
On Tuesday, the 21st of July, 1992,
We first met when we were baby journalists together. Flash forward many, many years, I'm living in London, working in politics. So I said, why don't you hop on a plane and come to London? I met this sort of hunched over little person with a huge backpack on, and we reconnected.
And it worked, because then I ended up marrying him.
We lived in London for about 17 years and built a life there, and then had 3 children in succession.
You're going to look after her, aren't you?
She put her tongue out.
I was constantly running away from Mum's world and the environment that I grew up in, where I always felt different.
Look at dancing, are we?
We're in Kensington Church Street, just coming down to Princess Diana's Church.
So all during my London life, I was the writer in London.
Writing is steeped in her blood. She's written around about 7 novels, 6 children's books. I don't know what she'd do if she didn't write.
The best grandmother in the world is a right. I hate it.
When we were together in the same environment, it could be fantastic. We could be like the best of mates.
We've got 2 little angels. And Nana has been babysitting them. We love you, Nana.
And then there was the call of Australia, the call to come back home. Nikki would wake up in the middle of the night desperately homesick for the smell of eucalyptus. Deadly seriously.
I do feel guilt, though, that I'm away from my family, that I'm depriving my parents of their grandchildren.
So we came back to Australia and lo and behold, another child was born.
Mum made it very clear very soon after we arrived in Sydney that she wasn't going to do any of the helping, any of the ferrying. If I'd come back to Australia for any help in any way in terms of a grandparent, I was looking at the wrong person. She was the gorgeous nonna, they called her, who took the kids to plays and shows and came round on their birthdays. In the last few years of her life, she started getting terrible, terrible foot pain. And then a year before she died, she thought she'd have an operation to cure it.
And they had to break a foot and shorten a bone. From that operation on, she struggled. She struggled to walk comfortably. That was the start of the big problems. It made Mum's life miserable. It stopped her from going out. She loved going for a walk or going to Zumba. It's all those little things that she had to stop doing. It destroyed her.
Yeah, so I got 2.
The schools are not free school, so you're not allowed to have an amusement bar, I'm sure.
No, but
She didn't want to be a bother. She knew how busy I was. She'd been a working mother herself.
Oh, is that what they say?
Go away. No, but it doesn't have
Nikki found the time to help Mum, but Mum very rarely asked for help.
I feel like there were too many times when she rang and I just said, Mum, I can't physically do it. I'm so sorry. I'm 3 suburbs away. I'm an hour away through heavy traffic. A lot of the times we did, most of the times, but it was always a juggle.
We tried nerve-type pain relief. We tried opiate-type pain relief. There was a couple of times where I hadn't been available and she would go and see what she called the doctor's supermarket.
What do I say? She was doing the doctor shopping thing.
One day she just rang me sobbing and she sounded so frightened. I didn't understand chronic pain and how deeply it affects every facet of your life. And I realise now in hindsight that she was in utter despair in that final week.
Nikki rang me and I couldn't believe. She said, Mum's gone. She said she's gone.
I had to go through all Mum's friends in the address book and tell them all. And I wondered if they all knew. Asking them, did you know she was going to do this?
I mean, Elayn rang me all the time and I rang her all the time, but I never picked up on anything at all. I knew she was unwell, but I didn't know how serious it was.
Nikki wanted to go back and look for any kind of sign or clue or answer. We all needed answers.
You're going through everything trying to find an actual note with words on it, some kind of expression of love or explanation. Mum left no note, nothing. No indication of what she was doing or why.
I don't know. What else?
When the police found Mum, there was a book on the coffee table next to her called The Peaceful Pill Handbook. I imagine it's an instruction book on pills for euthanasia.
Amid the shock and the trauma of what she did, I fell back on what I've always known to do, which is to write, to understand, to piece together. Was it accidental? Was it deliberate?
The autopsy report came back saying that Mum died of multi-drug toxicity. Mum told me all the time that she was going to end her own life, that she couldn't put up with the pain anymore. But we never believe it.
Stephen, thank you so much for being so lovely to Mum.
Oh, you're welcome. It's really nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
After all this time, I've heard a lot about you. Elayn's death was a real shock. I believe that Elayn was very good at, covering her tracks. I thought we had a really good patient-doctor relationship, and so for me to to, discover that, it was just one of the most shocking things that's happened to me in my career.
Oh. And I understand you did suggest to Elayn to go to a pain specialist or a pain clinic.
Yes, I did, yeah.
She
I gave her a
didn't do
referral.
it.
And she didn't do it.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she'd already decided before that. I'm really, really... Even to this day, I'm still gutted.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry for you.
Oh.
You lost your mum.
Thank you.
Nikki's mother's suicide really sort of plunged her into this whole world of assisted dying, suicide, euthanasia, care for the elderly.
My mother euthanased herself. It's difficult to say committed suicide. Were her final moments an act of empowerment or despair?
So Nikki wrote a column revealing for the first time publicly that her mother had committed suicide. The columns generated an enormous response. I think one of the great surprises for Nikki after she published the column was a tweet by Philip Nitschke saying she had actually sought out the help of his organisation.
And his tweet was something like, Nikki, it was empowerment. And then he was using all his Exit International jargon, which I had to get other people to decipher for me because I had no idea of this world at the time. It said something like, she attended forums. It was like, what forums? What does that mean? That means exit forums. I had no idea what that meant. And so I thought, I need to speak to Philip.
Good morning, good evening to you.
Well, initially I was very wary, but he kind of exploded open a whole other life of Elayn that I had no idea about.
We knew her for a long time. She'd been associated with Exit for some years, and she was a life member. In other words, she'd been a person who had believed in this issue. She'd come to workshops in Sydney, and she was worried about talking to family, and I would imagine that means talking to you.
Yeah.
She actually mentions it specifically in one of her letters that talking to family was difficult. And
There was a time, a couple of months before she killed herself, that we'd been speaking about euthanasia. And every time she'd bring it up, I'd just be like, but don't you want to see the grandkids grow up? I'd get too emotional, and I know now that was the wrong thing to do.
It would have been a wonderfully intelligent and thoughtful conversation that we could have had for several years before she died. And I didn't let her have that conversation, and I feel so bad about that.
Your mother made it pretty clear she did not want to go into an institution.
Yes.
She made that over and over, that she wanted her own independence and her own control.
I'm sorry if this message sounds all strange. I'm just bombed out on drugs. But I am in chronic pain, I'm immobile, and I'm desperate. If I could organise a home visit with Philip, I'd be very grateful.
It's desperation, it really is.
It is desperation. And it's amazing to think that they were probably the only people she could talk to.
Well, that's right. You can't...
They were listening on her level, and they were listening to what she wanted. And they go back to 2008.
Yeah, right.
So it's years and years of correspondence.
Yeah.
And then all this stuff about how she's trying to get onto the computer and she can't download the latest e-book, and you can feel her frustration.
She's getting frustrated.
Yeah, she was this little old lady who couldn't work things out technically.
I wanted to know more about this part of Mum's life and how other people involved with this issue feel.
My daughter and son know that I have the means to do things if I want to. That I don't want to go at the moment. I play tennis, I sail, I walk. But my fear personally is to become incontinent to the point where you can't help yourself, where you get hosed down every day in a dish because I mean, I've seen it. If I got to the point where I felt I could not look after myself,
yeah, I know. But I worry about your family and your children, what are you going to do?
I think that my children know, and I would tell them fairly soon. Unfortunately, we can't all be together. I would like to have a party and have a drink and say, you guys go and that's it.
Yeah.
So instead, what do I have to do? I maybe go to a motel somewhere or something and take the bits and pieces and do that by myself. It's not nice.
Which is like Mum. It was such a bleak and lonely death, we as a family would have just wanted to have been there to hold her hand.
But you can't because you become implicated.
After I wrote the column, one of the people I got contacted by was a doctor saying, Nikki, I know what your mother went through because I have chronic pain myself. I've had it for 23 years.
Dear Nikki, your words hit me right in the heart. I'm 61 and I've been suffering from a disabling, progressive and very painful form of arthritis for the last 23 years. And when I read her column, she was hurting so much and she had not a lot of understanding of the causes why her mother would have felt she needed to commit suicide as her only way out of pain.
Hi, sweetie. Hello, darling. And I feel like Helena's life, her story runs in tandem to Elayn's because they're in a similar position in terms of their pain, their medical condition, their despair over their pain. She opened up to me the whole world of what it is like to live with chronic pain.
6 o'clock, I start off with my evening medication, which, there's a million of them.
My goodness.
Yeah, that's right.
And when you travel, you have to take all
Take
of
them
this.
all, take them all, every time. I want to try to explain to Nikki how her mother felt, living with severe pain and desperately trying to figure out how the hell they can manage it. I have to lie down absolutely flat in the bed, on my back. If I lie on my side, my thoracic spine's very painful. The amount of mental tension it takes just to keep it under control is just absolutely extreme. And you've got to fight against it becoming the central aspect of your life all the time. And opiates are fantastic. They make you feel good and they make your pain better. It's a daily struggle against abusing them. So I unpeel one of these patches and stick it on where the worst pain is. Yep. Nikki's mum was trying to minimise and manage pain. It's all about managing it well. And really, with any situation of severe chronic pain, the patient really has to get to a chronic pain clinic.
This is our sensory testing lab,
Right.
Nikki, and Alan's doing a nerve conduction study on Dan.
Does it hurt at all?
No, it doesn't hurt at all. It's an interesting sensation.
I don't think euthanasia is ever justified in a patient with chronic pain. If Nikki's mother had have come here, she would have been seen by a doctor, a physiotherapist and a psychologist. We make our assessments and then we combine them to come up with an integrated plan to offer her. There's a lot that we can offer and most people will benefit from it, and with the aim of enabling them to function again, enjoying their life and getting on with their life.
If only my mum had done something like this.
I know, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I feel like your letter was so compassionate.
I've been lucky. I've had access to pain clinics. I'm a doctor. I've kind of known what I'm doing. I've had all the right medications. And even so, after 24 years, it's just too bloody much to live with, honestly. I almost can't work. I'm almost in a wheelchair and my pain is almost out of control. It's a time I can say, OK, I've put up with this enough. I can take a good option and have what your mum couldn't have, which is hopefully, a good death, the best I can have.
Last year, 50 people ended their lives with the help of Dignitas. Most of them were foreigners who knew they couldn't die the way they wanted to in their own countries.
I am a member of Dignitas, which is an organisation based in Switzerland that provides accompanied dying for people who are in situations where they feel that their life has become too painful. And for the last 5 years, I've been planning how and when I'm going to end my life. I'm not sure whether I'm empowering myself, whether I'm being a coward, whether I'm doing something bad, whether I'm doing the right thing. All I know is it's the only choice. And your mother felt like it was the only choice, but she didn't have a good choice. She only had the bad choice, and that's just not fair.
And do you think it's a lot of GPs too, just not understanding exactly the magnitude?
It was about 12 months ago that I decided that probably it was time to go. So I got the kids all together and they all chose what they wanted to do. And we all had fantastic, wonderful adventures. I know they'll miss me, and I feel dreadfully guilty for deciding to leave them. And I've done everything I can to bring them along with me on the journey.
As she's dying, they're all going to be holding hands. Her children and her best friend. So they're all going to be holding hands. And I think, well, that's the best way to die, isn't it? Elayn's death has reconfigured me as a person. I was suddenly unsure of everything, of how I'd lived my life, of how I'd been with my mother, if I'd been enough of a daughter to her.
What?
And if I had just 1 minute with her again, just a minute, I would just tell her, Mum, you were magnificent. You were so magnificent. And I love you so much. And I feel like I never told her that in my life. And I was just never grateful enough. But then again, is any child.